It's your friendly math tutor, Miss C, here to graph the equation y equals x squared minus 6x plus 8. So this is a quadratic function, which means our graph is going to be a parabola that looks like a U. That's what that graph looks like. So one thing I want to point out as we look at this is that there is not a number written in front of x squared. So when there's not a number written in front of x squared, it's a 1. Like a 1 times x squared is x squared. What that means is this is an upward facing parabola, just like the parent function y equals x squared. So here is how I like to approach graphing parabolas or graphing quadratic functions when they are written in general form, which is the form that this equation is written in. The first thing I like to do is find the y-intercept because that's the easiest thing to see straight away from general form. So a y-intercept is found when we substitute a value of 0 in for x. So if we were to write this out, everywhere I see x, I'm going to plug in 0. Okay, so I know that when x is 0, y is 8. So I'm going to go ahead and plot that point right here. Okay, there we go. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and erase this. Oh, and I also erased my point, so that was not very great. So let's try that again. Here we go. All right, the next thing I want to do is when I'm trying to graph in a parabola, I like to then find the roots or the x-intercepts. So I'm going to go ahead and factor this. So when we factor this, I'm going to write this in factored form. I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to 8 and add to negative 6. So I can think right away that there are a couple factor pairs of 8. We have 8 and 1, and we have 2 and 4. The only one that could add to a 6 would be the 2 and the 4. Doesn't matter what order you write these in. I know that to get a positive 8 and then to also get a negative 6, two negatives make a positive. And then when I add two negatives, I get a negative. So I know that both of these have to be negative. All right. So when I am trying to find my roots, I am substituting 0 in for y and figuring out what x is. And so a way to think about this is if either one of these binomials takes on the value of 0, it's going to be 0 times the other binomial, which equals 0. So in this case, x, what does x have to be to make 0? So it has to be 4, right? Because 4 minus 4 is 0. 0 times my other binomial is 0. So that's true. And then what value does this x have to take on to make this entire binomial 0? If you said 2, you are correct. So I have x-intercepts at 4, 0 and at 2, 0. So I'm going to go ahead and plot those. So I'm going to plot that right there and right here. Okay, so those are my two points. I'm not doing a very good job of plotting these. Okay, now the last thing we need to do is we need to find the vertex. And here is the cool thing about math and patterns is because parabolas are symmetrical, the vertex has to fall directly between the two roots. So if I know that one root is at 2, the next is at 4, I know that the x coordinate of my vertex has to be 3 because it has to be equidistant from both of those. So I'm going to erase this here so we have some room to write. Okay, so everywhere I see x, I'm going to substitute in positive 3. So I'm going to go ahead and 3 squared minus 6 times 3 plus 8. All right, so that would be 9 minus 18 plus 8. So if I add these all together, I end up with y equals negative 1. So what that means is my vertex is at 3, negative 1. So I'm going to go ahead and put a point here that shows that. And then I'm going to do my very best to try to graph this accurately. Sometimes I find this really hard. Oops. erase that. Sometimes I think it's really hard to draw these curves on a computer screen. Okay, well, it's not perfect by any means, but you kind of get the gist of how this should look. If your teacher is asking you what the line of symmetry is on this graph, the line of symmetry is the line that if you were to fold your paper on, the graph would fold on top of itself because it's perfectly symmetrical. So it is always x equals the x coordinate of the vertex. So this is the line of symmetry. This is the equation. All right, so there you have it. The graph of y equals x squared minus 6x plus 8. Thank you for graphing this quadratic function, the graph of the parabola with me. Make sure to subscribe for more math content. And remember, you've got this. Till next time.